my entitled manager gives me an ultimatum, claiming that I could either choose to work in my awful paying job or I can choose to go to graduate school. So I decide to get revenge by quitting right there on the spot, proving to that manager once and for all exactly where my loyalty lies. And I've never felt better about getting back at somebody in my life. Here's what happened. So I used to work for a company that advertises knights, horses, and real weapons. And trust me, if you know, then you know. And I was a follow spot operator, and basically you point the big light at the horseman to highlight them. The company didn't seem to like hiring extra people for that position, and in hindsight, the turnover rate was pretty high. Plus, the pay was only $10 an hour, and trust me, this will be important later on. During my work there, I had major surgery, which took me out for about 2 months, requiring quitting and then hiring back again. And that never seemed to be an issue. A few months after that, I developed a pre-septic bacterial infection to a mild form of sepsis. My fever was also 103, and my heart rate kept going up. I was very sick, so this required me to be out for a week. However, for some reason, I had to miss an extra night of work and forgot to call in, largely because my medications knocked me out. And trust me, I know this was my bad. This is also going to be important. At the same time, I'd been accepted into graduate school and had a class that met one Saturday a month. Eventually, I was called into my boss's office to discuss the no-call, no-show. The conversation went as follows. My manager said to me, "You did a no-call, no-show, and that is really bad." I said to them, "I'm sorry. I sent you an email and a doctor's note afterwards, and I did that as soon as I could. I understand that this is an issue, though." My manager then said that they've written me up, but that's not actually why they called me into the office. My manager then said to me, "So you're asking for a Saturday off every single month? Well, that's our highest attendance day, so we can't do that." I then said to them, "Well, I thought with enough notice you could schedule around me." But the manager wasn't having it. They said to me, "See, that's just the problem. We've had to constantly lean into your needs, and now it's time for you to consider our needs and your team's needs." I then asked them what they're talking about, and that's right when they said the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. They said to me, "It's either us or the class." I explained to them that I need this class for full attendance and I cannot drop it. It's right then that the manager said in a smug tone, "Well, I guess we'll see where we are in 2 months." I said okay, and then I left their office. I told the coworkers that I liked goodbye, and then I clocked out. My manager then comes storming out to my truck to scream at me, asking how I could quit on them like that. So I told them that they wanted me to choose between grad school or this awful job, and I had made my decision. I then took off my costume belt and I handed it to them, saying I'd bring the rest back when I had time. Well, a week later, I got my first real stagehand job that paid me $20 an hour. So yeah, screw my other manager. I have a master's degree now, and I'm set to start teaching at colleges this next semester. And as a cherry on top, I'm now a professional stagehand. So hopefully my former manager understands that they should never give their employee an awful ultimatum. Yeah, that manager basically punched themselves in the face. Here you are making $10 an hour, and now they're like, "Oh, you gotta quit that class on Saturdays. It's time for you to start thinking about us." It's like, seriously, what on earth are you talking about? This job sucks big time. You think I won't quit on the spot? Like, I've had jobs like this where the manager just does not care about what you do outside of work, but then they also try to act like they have full control over your life. Like, I'm sorry, that's not how this is gonna work. I show up to pay the bills and make rent. You are simply a paycheck and possible insurance. So honestly, good for the original poster for putting their foot down and deciding that they are not gonna put up with that garbage, because that place sounds like an awful mess to work for. And I don't blame you for a second for stepping away and moving on. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for fat shaming my aunt at my dad's funeral after she continued to ridicule me about my weight issues at my dad's funeral? Here's what happened. This story also came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Back in 2015, my dad had suffered from a blood clot heart attack and passed away as a result of not getting to the hospital on time. Due to the loss of my dad at the time, I lost a bit of weight out of depression, bereavement, and stress of having to arrange the funeral for my dad. While at the funeral, my aunt kept making remarks about my weight, saying to everyone there, "We need to fatten this one up." And then she would point to me, despite the fact that she had an overweight problem herself. She kept on saying this to every family member that attended the funeral. None of my family members there said anything and simply ignored my aunt, but thankfully my cousin told her off by saying that this isn't the time or the place to make remarks like that. But my horrible aunt had the gall to say to him, "I am just trying to help them in this time of need." After saying goodbye to my dad and during the food gathering, my aunt came up to me and said to me, "With all this food, you could do your dad a favor and eat a lot of food because you need the weight." Now, by that time, I had had enough, and I started shouting at her. I said to her, "Well, whatever weight I need, I can use a lot of yours since you're definitely packing." after I said that, I stormed off, leaving her looking rather gobsmacked because I yelled that around everyone to hear. Later that day, I was at home, and my cousin rang me up to tell me that my aunt was way out of line, and she absolutely deserved that. Apparently, my cousin told me that after I left, my aunt blew a fit and said I was being rude and immature, while also trying to say that she was only trying to help. But when nobody would take her side, she stormed off in a huff as a result. Until that day, I never forgave nor wanted to talk to my aunt ever again, because she ruined the day I was saying goodbye to my father. On a positive note, after my dad's passing, I was able to put weight back on by eating right, and also started working out at a gym where I was able to gain some muscle. And even now, I still keep going. When it comes to my horrible aunt, she still has not set foot in a gym. So I need to know, am I the jerk for telling off my aunt at my dad's funeral? No, you're definitely not the jerk. Your aunt was absolutely out of line. She knew what she was doing. She was making fun of you and poking fun at you at a time where that really was not appropriate. Your dad just suddenly passed away, and she was to sit there and try and make jokes about it? Like, seriously, this lady's messed up. There is legitimately no good excuse for her to act that way, and if I was in your shoes, I would have freaked out as well. Like, this scenario was completely inappropriate, and it really was so uncalled for. And sure, she might be like this in other situations where she's playful and she likes to poke fun, but it really seemed like she was missing the mark in this regard. I know when I've gone to other funerals, the attitude is never like poking fun at people or even like joking or laughing. It's always very serious and very respectful. People are trying their best to put their best foot forward, and they're trying to be there for family members who are clearly grieving, and you definitely fall into that category. So for your aunt to literally just not even see what's going on in the room and instead decide to poke fun at your weight, that in my opinion is so weird. I mean, your cousin did try to set her straight at one point. They stepped in and said, hey, what are you doing? This is not the time. And sure, maybe the aunt thought she was being like the playful aunt of like poking fun at you, but like, lady, can you read the room? This is not the time or place to be doing that. It's very clear and obvious that the original poster was going through a really bad state right now. They were sad and depressed, they missed their dad, and they were stressed out of their mind just trying to get the funeral together. Like, I don't know about you, but I would not want to deal with that kind of treatment, especially in the middle of my own father's funeral. So truly, I don't blame you. I don't think you're the jerk, and I think that your aunt is a massive bully. My mother-in-law has a problem with hoarding, constantly digging through my trash and my personal items, making a point to save every little thing that we throw away. And after dealing with this for nearly 3 years, I am finally at my breaking point, and now I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I live with my husband of 20 years, our teenage son, and my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law moved in full-time in 2020 after selling her house. She helps with our son and has staked the laundry and dishes as her territory. She is originally from Southeast Asia, but lived in the United States about 50 years. I am the wage earner of the home, and my husband is a stay-at-home dad with very part-time work as a web designer. Now, here's where my problems really begin. I have several privacy-related problems with my mother-in-law, but one problem in particular is that she digs through the trash daily and rescues items. Some end up in bags stacked in her room, some she brings to the flea market with her and gives it away, and some items she tries to give to neighbors or people who visit the house. Both my husband and I have spoken to her more times than I can count about not digging through our trash. She says she won't do it again, but gets angry about being confronted and definitely does it again. But now she just tries to hide it better. All of my neighbors have reported seeing her digging in the trash. They find it funny, but they know it upsets me. To the best of my knowledge, she does not dig through our neighbors' trash, thank God. I have managed to mitigate some of this by tearing things up or breaking them when I don't want them given away. Let me explain a little bit about some of the instances that have really been bothering me. So have you ever gotten a hole in your underwear and decided it's time for new underwear and that now you're just gonna toss out the old one? Well, my mother-in-law dug them out and tried to give them to the lawn workers. Is your fruit rotten and it's time to go? She'll dig them up, cut out the bad parts, and bags up the good pieces, and leaves them on the neighbor's doorsteps. Every single Chinese food container that has ever entered my house has been painstakingly saved, washed by her, and bagged up and piled in her room. And this is all against my will. Every single plastic bag, including, for instance, freezer bags of vegetables from the grocery store, it's all washed and hung in various places in my garage to dry and be reused. Yes, I've asked her not to do this because I don't like being surprised that the bag of peas in the freezer is not in fact peas, but instead some indiscernible frozen leftover masquerading as peas. I'm sure by now you all realize that she is a hoarder, and her bedroom in my house, which I bought and paid for and I maintain, is piled high with junk, at least some of which she rescued from my trash. A couple times in the last decade, we would confront her about the piles of junk, and we would go through them with her and forcibly give away or throw away items. She would be very upset and always says she's gonna hurt herself when we do this. I mean, her room in my beautiful house looks absolutely awful, which she moved in with us in 2020, a good bit of junk came along and was deposited in our garage. We have spent the last 3 years taking out a small bit at a time and convincing her to donate it to somebody at the flea market. I am depressed about the situation. It has really strained my marriage. I'm not happy about the example it sets for my son, and my anger simmers all the time, and occasionally I'd yell at my husband or I'd beg my mother-in-law to stop, but nothing ever changes. But the trash digging really is the offense I need to know what to do about. But that's not the only way she's overstepped her boundaries. Here's just a couple more that might give you an idea of what we deal with. Now, I know she goes through my open mail and opens bills in my little office. I have caught her opening my unopened mail. I've yelled at her and that has stopped. But she's also gone into my bedroom when I'm at work and organized my shoes and moved some of my things around. That also deserved a yelling, and I made my husband buy a combo lock for the bedroom door, but he's never installed it, and she seems to have stopped. She goes through our stored snacks, pulls out a few things and backs them up, and gives them to our neighbors on a weekly basis, and this is one of those things that I just can't get to stop. She also has an OCD for turning off lights, and will turn off the front porch light even if I am out shopping and come home in the complete dark and have to stumble my way to the front door. I confront her every time this happens, and occasionally she manages to turn the light on when she sees me arriving. If I am working on a project between the house and the garage, she will ask me on an hourly basis if I am done with the lights that I'm using. I'm honestly done fighting this. I tell her to leave my lights on, but this doesn't destroy me as much as the trash. And trust me, I'm very much over the trash digging. I have proposed to my husband of putting a lock on the trash can, which means that we are the only ones who can put things in it, and I will have to take it to the curb the morning of pickup. This is very much an inconvenience to me, and my husband is very resistant. He wants me to put more sensitive items in our neighbor's trash, which they are okay with, but I also feel inconvenienced and it's not private. I'm at my wit's end. I think I'm a good daughter-in-law, but I have lost a lot of love in the last few years. I am frequently frustrated in my own home. I feel no one's on my side and that I have no power and no privacy, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. That seriously sounds like a nightmare. I can't imagine living like that. Here you have your mother-in-law living with you and your family, and she is just completely stepping on every single boundary you give her, and from the sounds of it, it really does seem like you're gonna have to secure your trash can if you ever hope to have any kind of privacy in regards to your trash. Like seriously, that sounds insane to me. There is no good reason for her to act that way, and I think I would lose my mind if I dealt with that, especially the part where she's going through like old underwear and bills and all this other paperwork. Like seriously, lady, mind your own business. Also, if I'm gonna throw something away, it means that I don't want to keep it. If I wanted to keep any containers from like the Chinese food restaurant or even my underwear with a hole in it, I would have kept it and used it for another day. Like this really is a problem about hoarding, and I seriously think it might be time for some kind of intervention. And I'm talking like possible like professional help, because this is insane. I mean, it started with her room and then it led to the garage, and now this could easily lead in other directions. So I think some serious changes need to be made, because this current living environment absolutely does not work. And if I was in your shoes, I would feel the exact same way. Today, I messed up by pretending that I don't speak English to a cashier at checkout. But now, after coming back to his store, I feel completely silly, as we have now exchanged numbers, and he's excited to try teach me English. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So this happened a couple weeks ago, where I had a few friends come visit me from Argentina. They don't speak English, so obviously around them, I speak Spanish. I'm Argentinian and Spanish, born in the United States, and Spanish is my first language, but I speak English fluently. On this day, I was taking them a few places in my town. I live in the Midwest, so our tours consisted of a lot of coffee shops, as well as Target and a TJ Maxx. We were checking out at TJ Maxx, and the cashier greeted us like normal, and started silently scanning our items. At this point, we haven't spoken much. All I said was yes and thank you to him, asking if we found everything all right. He was very attractive, and my friends made a joke about American men. We started talking a little as he scanned, and he noticed we weren't speaking English. He looks up and he kindly asked if we were from here. Now, I've dealt with every kind of awful comment and question under the sun, but his was just curiosity. Now, my friends knew certain words and phrases, and one answers by saying, "No, we're from Argentina." The cashier then goes on about how he loves Argentina and soccer, and then finishes by asking if we live in the United States so far. He spoke fast, so my friends all turned to me to translate, but instead I turned to him and say, "Sorry, little to no English," all with an accent behind it. My friends all looked confused and quietly asked what I was doing. Honestly, it was just a gut reaction. I've always wanted to use my Spanish-speaking skills in this way. For example, last week at work, a lady came in, looked me up and down, and in the rudest way possible, asked if I spoke English. Shocked, I quietly said yes, of course, but then I thought I could have said no and not had to deal with her. But this time my mind decided this was the moment to try this. After telling him that, he apologizes, and in broken Spanish, he says that he loves Argentina and football. It was cute that he was trying, and we all laughed and thanked him, and he ended the conversation with adios and buenos dias, which is good morning, but it's the thought that counts. In the car, my friends died laughing, telling me that was so stupid, but I said, whatever, I'm never gonna see him again, right? Well, a couple days passed by, and honestly, I forgot I did that, and we went back to TJ Maxx because my friend was leaving soon, and she wanted to exchange a dress that she bought. It was just the two of us this time, as last time there was 4 of us in total. The line was super long, so she makes the line while I shopped around a little bit more. She had already made it to the cashier by the time I got there, and of course, it was the same guy. I recognized him straight away, and as he had his back turned, asking for help on the exchange, my friend jokingly asked if I know English today. I was prepared to go either way, but when he came back, he looks at me weird and asked if we were the girls from Argentina, and he said this in the cutest broken Spanish I've ever heard. I was hoping he forgot us, but I smiled and said yes in Spanish. I then kept adding to the issue and say to him, oh, you remember, in my attempt at broken English. He then says in Spanish that you guys are very pretty, and we just laughed and thanked him, and he finishes her items and starts scanning mine. My friend had a phone call to take, so she excused herself. Now it was just him and I was ready to come clean, but then he asked if I was living here now. This time he said it in English, but he spoke slow, hoping I could understand. I responded and kept the act by saying I just moved here, and I was just digging myself deeper at this point. He tried to give me a few recommendations, and at this point I was struggling to act like I didn't know what he was saying, and he was trying to find the right words that I could understand. I end up paying and I was ready to leave when he puts his hand to his ear, gesturing to try and get my phone number. He said he could show us around sometime, and if he needed anyone to learn English with, he would be happy to help me out. I actually found this guy attractive, and honestly, I felt like garbage already, so I just gave him my number. I left, and later that day, I received a text message from him in Spanish. He was using Google Translate to try and communicate with me, and we ended up talking a lot. He was so sweet, and said he always wanted to learn Spanish, so maybe he could teach me English and I could teach him Spanish. He asked me if I was free this Saturday to meet up with him and a few of his friends for drinks, and I haven't given him a clear answer because I don't think I can keep this up any longer. Oh boy, that really is a messy situation. Here you have a guy that you actually might really enjoy being around, and instead of having a good time with them and getting to know him, you're stuck in this weird lie. I mean, you seriously cornered yourself, and that really sucks because it sounds like this could be really fun in the long run. So honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would message him or meet up with him in some kind of way and simply just tell him the truth. Tell him straight up right now that yes, you do know English and that you're sorry for lying to him earlier. And I wouldn't try and lie about the situation at all. I would just be completely transparent and be like, look, I always wanted to try this and I really regret trying it on you. If this guy is as cool as you're describing, then you will probably be okay with it and think it's funny. But if this guy freaks out and gets offended, well then that's okay as well. At least you know where you both stand and you can then move on with a lesson learned. But hopefully this all works out because this guy you're talking to sounds like a lot of fun and I would hate for it to be ruined all because of a silly joke. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.